Joining us on the line is Amit Segal. He's the chief political analyst for Israel's leading news outlet, Channel 12 News, and author of the daily newsletter, It's Noon in Israel. Amit, thanks so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben. Good night from Israel.
So let's talk about what this means to Israel that President Trump authorized the strike on Iran's Fordo facility, the nuclear facility buried under 90 meters of rock, using some of the most sophisticated planes and weaponry known to man, stuff that is only available to the United States. First of all, what does it mean to Israel? What does it mean to the world? What does it mean for the United States that President Trump took what I think is one of the bravest actions I've ever seen a president take?
I think it's the first time the United States of America has adopted the Begin doctrine. Begin was is the late Prime Minister of Israel, who in 1981 set the rule that there won't be a nuclear weapon in the Middle East. And when Iraq tried to obtain a nuclear weapon, so he bombed it. Ronald Reagan, the then president, condemned Begin and even declared a temporary arms embargo. So it's very, very good to see that President Trump did not follow Reagan's steps in that matter and actually joined the Begin doctrine, thus bombing Iran's nuclear facilities.
So let's talk about the extent to which this prevents Iran's nuclear ambitions moving forward. What comes next? Obviously, every time Iran is hit, they then sound off and talk about fire and fury and how they're going to destroy everything in sight. I think every single night of the war so far, they've issued some sort of statement about how it will be a historic night remembered forever. And what they actually mean is that they will fire 10 missiles at Israel, 8 of which will be shot down and 2 of which will fall in civilian areas. So what does it mean when Iran is threatening, shaking its fist at the United States, threatening the Straits of Hormuz, threatening Israel?
So they are trying to cause Israel the most severe damage. That's what they can do. It's not that they can escalate against Israel. The only question is the United States. Will they shut down the Hormuz area? I'm not sure. Will they try to kill Americans? I think that President Trump and Secretary Rubio put it in the most blunt words that it would be considered a declaration of war. So I think, in my opinion, that they will try to do something symbolic, unless Ayatollah Khamenei decided to go nuts and to actually end this regime. Now, here's the thing. We have a case in our history in which a dictator in the Middle East didn't understand a Republican U.S. president threatening him. It was Saddam Hussein. But Saddam Hussein could explain himself because he really didn't have weapons of mass destruction. Now, Ayatollah Khamenei knows that there was a reason why President Trump came after him. So it would be extremely stupid for him to try and engage a war against the United States of America because he has only one level to escalate against the U.S. Troops. But the U.S. has a lot to escalate. For instance, the 85% of the Iranian economy are concentrated in one island and one port. For instance, killing Khamenei himself in a bunker in northern Tehran, etc., etc. So it would be a very, very stupid thing for Ayatollah Khamenei to do, which is exactly the reason why there is a suspicion he might try to do it.
So, I mean, when we look at what Israel does next year, how much longer this war lasts? So President Trump made very clear this was his mission. His mission is now accomplished, barring some sort of further action from the Iranians. Israel, of course, continues to fly sorties because they're ballistic missiles that are still flying into Israel every single night. So from Israel's perspective, how much longer does this mission last? What does this look like? Does this look more like Prime Minister Netanyahu declares an end to major military operations, and then essentially it's mowing the lawn in Iran the same way that it has been in Judea and Samaria or in the Gaza Strip or southern Lebanon or southern Syria in the moment?
Okay, so as for Israel, in a week or so, Israel is about to end its a pile of targets in Iran, which includes the Iranians' nuclear facilities, almost 100% done. The ballistic missile program, 75% done. Israel eliminated 2/3 of the launchers and give or take 1/4 of the ballistic missiles. So once Israel eliminates 30, 40, 50 more launchers, it necessarily means that we can actually back to give or take normal routine in Israel. So Prime Minister Netanyahu tonight said, give or take, that silence will be met with silence. This is a notorious and infamous policy that Israel has taken over the last decades against Hamas and Hezbollah, which said you can actually build your arsenal and you recruit new terrorists and build tunnels, but as long as you don't attack us, we won't attack you. Now, it's the same policy, but different, because it's the same policy applied after Israel will have already eliminated their launchers and ballistic missiles and their nuclear program. So it emanates from the fact that Israel is under the impression that Iran would not be able to sign a deal. They have been humiliated too much. They are too proud. They will not be able to sign a deal. Only sort of an undeclared ceasefire.
So, Amit, when we look at how this shapes the future for Israel, obviously the answer is in enormous ways. Israel has completely reshuffled the deck in the Middle East. If you had said to most people after October 7th and the devastation of October 7th, 2023, that fast forward a year and a half and Israel would have essentially wiped out Hezbollah to the point where Hezbollah can't even get involved in this conflict, that they hit Hezbollah so hard that Assad fell in Syria, clearing the skies for Israeli highway, like an air highway, from Tel Aviv, essentially, to Tehran, that Israel would have devastated Hamas, that Israel would be flying clear sorties over Iranian skies in the middle of the day for weeks on end. People would have thought you're nuts. I mean, what this appears to have done is set Israel up as an extraordinary regional power for the foreseeable future. What does that mean for the Abraham Accords? And also, what does that mean for the Gaza Strip, where Israel is still attempting to finish off Hamas, restore its hostages? Israel obviously has been using the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation to disintermediate the United Nations and anyone else who's working for Hamas. What does this mean for the immediate and midterm future for the state of Israel?
So first of all, it's an opportunity to reframe this war. The horrific events of October 7, 2023 were not the beginning of the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza, but the Pearl Harbor in the regional war of Israel against Iran. And this gives an explanation. Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, is not a state leader, but a division commander that actually rebuilt his leadership in Tehran, thus invading Israel without notifying Tehran and Beirut. And that's why Israel could overcome Pearl Harbor exactly the way Roosevelt overcame Pearl Harbor. And that's the reason, in my opinion, why defeating Iran following the defeat of Hezbollah and Syria would lead to a sort of new solutions in Gaza. I'll give you one example, for instance. And I know that Hamas leaders are horrified by the event. It's as if an Israeli prime minister would wake up in the morning only to find out that China occupied Washington. Now, here's the thing. It can open a window for a total collapse of Hamas, or for a total surrender of parts of Hamas, or for something of an interim agreement in which Israel can actually save the perimeter and Philadelphia corridor, and to have the free access to Gaza if terrorist activities coming back. And that will actually wrap up the war with a peace agreement with Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia would get the end of the Gaza war, and in exchange, it would give peace agreement with Israel. That's, in my opinion, one of the scenarios that are feasible.
So, I mean, obviously, this is not just a triumph for Prime Minister Netanyahu and for Israel. It's also a triumph for President Trump, who managed this as well as any world leader has managed a conflict. He gave Prime Minister Netanyahu the green light either before or after the actual strikes went forward. He obviously had provided material support. He never wavered in his support for Israel along this entire line. He said that Israel needed to do what it had to do. And then he said, okay, when it appears clear that the Israelis need some help finishing off Fordo, at least to not take whatever the risky option be, he then went and he did the thing. It's an extraordinary act of spine by the president of the United States. He changed the world. He changed the Middle East in one stroke. And honestly, I can't give too much credit for the president of the United States for making this move for both America and for civilization more broadly. What's the feeling in Israel about President Trump right now?
Well, I used to say that Israel could have been the reddest state in the United States had it joined the United States as the 51st state. It's something between Montana and Alabama. Now I think it's even redder than what is the reddest state, the most Republican one? I think
Montana,
maybe
maybe?
Montana.
I'd have
Okay,
to look.
so I think Kamala Harris shouldn't have registered to run here tomorrow morning. It's something like 95% to 5. And I think Israel is so lucky that President Trump won the election, because there is no chance on earth that President Harris would have done it. You know, if you read the statements by senators like Chuck Schumer, who pretended to be a true friend of Israel, that pay a lip service to say that Iran is a terrorist state, and yet opposes this attack without the approval of Congress, as if Iranians wouldn't have listened to Congress. It would have been kept a secret. So President Trump is very popular in Israel right now, and he didn't have the October 7th failure to actually compensate for, like Netanyahu. But this combination of President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu turns to be, I think, one of the most powerful alliances between a president and a prime minister, and in this case, for the benefit of the whole region.
Well, Amit Segal, again, thank you for your coverage. He's chief political analyst for Israel's leading news outlet, Channel 12 News, author of the daily newsletter, It's Noon in Israel, which you should absolutely check out as well. His Telegram channel, his stuff is really great. Amit, thanks so much for the time and the coverage.
Thanks so much, Ben.